I was working with Brad Fisher on another movie called A Long Walk, which didn't go, and he had this script and he had this deal with Amblin about making it, and they were looking for a director, and we started talking about it, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to just get into a classical movie about Dracula. I mean, so I completely fell in love with this project immediately. It was like, how could I, to even just get to be in conversation about it was thrilling. He is the ultimate villain in fiction, and he's pure evil, but he's also driven by a very basic need that we all have. I mean, obviously in his particular case, it's about blood, but it can be related, it can be, compared to many other things. And I found that to be such a fascinating aspect to a person who is actually sophisticated and an aristocrat on one side, and then can just turn into this monster, and this is what we aimed at, making him literally a monster. A lot of the Dracula movies that have been in the past have been gothic, or they have a sense of romance, or they've had all these aspects to them, but to just make Dracula into just pure horror hasn't really been done much before, and at least not for decades. And I just wanted to embrace that opportunity to create a pure, raw horror movie with Dracula at its center. All credit to Brage Schott for creating that script, who wrote the original draft, because he saw that. He saw that this is just such a contained, wonderful story all on its own. And yes, you have the blueprints for the story in the captain's log in the novel, but you don't know exactly what you're saying. You don't know what actually happened between those log entries. So that is a huge, vast, wonderful opportunity to create a story about the human beings who are just mentioned as names in the novel, and tell how they are in peril, because that's what's so wonderful, is that you see Dracula from a point of view of just a regular human being, not from the point of view of Van Helsing or somebody who is close to Dracula. To them, he's just this distant monster that just came into their world to destroy it. That's such an aspect of horror, the horror genre, that you can create all this tension in a very short, a very small environment. But in this case, what I loved about it, compared to other movies I've done, is that the small space is actually huge. You're out in the ocean, out in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. So it is, or for the most part, and it's vast and it's contained at the same time. And I think that's visually very intriguing. Having been around Guillermo del Toro, his mind has of course influenced me. Obviously his movies do, but also the way he sees how to use light and sets and camera angles, and you can study his films. But also, Spielberg's movies are always such, even in the most suspenseful moments, they have such warmth. And I think the humanity always comes through, regardless of the spectacle. And I think that's been an influence. But I think also David Fincher, with his stark, cold, very clean visual style, is also has influenced my horror filmmaking, because I love the classical story, the classical use of camera, the classical use of light, and the whole 9 yards.